Hollywood and Highland, Highland and Hollywood. This intersection has become synonymous with the film industry the same way people associate Hollywood with the Walk of Fame, Grauman's Chinese Theater, and the Academy Awards. Yet, there are not many who are aware of the abundance of history surrounding them. In this episode, we explore Highland Avenue, the street that connects us to the heart of Hollywood. During the California Gold Rush, there was an abundant amount of people coming from the East Coast towards the West Coast. One of the many women who eventually moved out to California was Mary Mosby Highland. She was born in 1865 in Illinois. She then married Thomas Walter Price, who was a blacksmith from Missouri and took his last name. They moved to Hollywood in 1888 on Highland and Fountain Avenue. They adopted a girl named Myrtle Francis. Thomas Price continued his blacksmith business while they lived their life in farmland Hollywood. Unfortunately, that idyllic life ended on April 10, 1901, when Mrs. Price died of a brain tumor. She was then interred at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery and is widely known as the first to be interred there. Her neighbor, Mary Mole, who was Hollywood's first teacher, wanted the city to honor Price, ironically not for her death, but for the street going through her strawberry farm. As we explore these streets, we come to discover that they're named after those who have walked these streets.
Hello guys, we're here at the famous Hollywood Heritage Museum. What's surprising about this museum, it wasn't actually a museum at all. It was actually a filming location, a barn actually, for the famous movie The Squaw Man, which is Hollywood's first feature film, shot in Hollywood actually. This barn actually was shot where the current Chase building is, which is in Selma and Vine. But let me show you around, tell you about the history, and hopefully learn something from this segment. Come on.
A little more than 100 years ago, this city was populated not with people, but with farms and open space. Not too far from the heart of Hollywood, we see a barn. A barn that changed the course of Hollywood history. What is now known as the Hollywood Heritage Museum was the horse stable of a man named Colonel Robert Northam. His house was located where the current Hollywood Plaza is located. He would spend his time tending to his land and to his horses. In 1903, he sold his land to a real estate realtor named Jacob Stern, who would later develop the Hollywood and Vine area, as well as the Hollywood Plaza. In the early days, since Hollywood was a dry town, this also meant that people held high morals, including not being able to show any films. The rules weren't meant to last. Some early film studios started moving west, so Stern decided to take advantage of this, and decided to use his barn as a rental facility. A little-known filmmaker named Cecil B. DeMille decided for Flagstaff, Arizona. Once he learned of a barn for rent in Hollywood, and seeing the vast landscapes, he decided to go for Hollywood. The Squaw Man is known as the first feature-length film in Hollywood. The barn was used for several scenes in the film, as seen here. In 1926, the barn was moved onto the Paramount lot and used as a set for Western films as well as a studio gym.
Now here there's a famous picture with Jesse Lasky and Cecil B. DeMille because they designated this barn during the 50s when it was on the Paramount lot actually. What originally happened was they had the barn for years with no care whatsoever at where it was at Selma and Vine. But Jesse Lasky and Cecil B. DeMille decided, you know what, there's a lot of history tied with us with this barn. So they took it from where it was to the Paramount lot. And that's where they shot a lot of Westerns, and it was used as a gym for a while. But they decided to designate it as a kind of historical landmark in the 50s. So that's what this sign is for, to show where, in their eyes, Hollywood kind of started.
In 1956, Jesse Lasky and DeMille realized how important the barn was, so they decided to designate it as a state historical building, as being the first major Hollywood studio. Unfortunately, times were changing, and during the 70s, the barn was moved out of Paramount and onto a parking lot across from Capitol Records. After many years trying to find the barn a new home, the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce decided on Highland Avenue. After a discarded idea for a film museum across the Hollywood Bowl, they decided it would be a perfect location for the Hollywood Heritage Museum. The barn has been here since 1986, and it proves to show future generations that with a little luck, historic buildings like this can be saved to continue telling its story.
Hey guys, do you recognize this place? We're at the Hollywood Bowl. There's such a long history with this place. Come and join me and let's go talk about it.
Across the street from the barn, we have one of the most iconic Hollywood landmarks of all time, the Hollywood Bowl. Famous now for its summer concerts, but when it started, it wasn't like this. Pittsburgh paint fortune heiress Mrs. Christine Witherell Stevenson came to Hollywood in 1918 and had the idea to bring some culture to the city. She wanted to present religious plays, and in 1919, she established the Theater Arts Alliance. Herself, along with other citizens, looked for a suitable outdoor area, and they found it where the bowl is located now. The property was known as Daisy Dell. With the aid of Mr. Hollywood C.E. Toberman, Mrs. Chansey Clark, and Mrs. Stevenson herself, purchased the property for $49,000. They tested the area's acoustics and discovered that they were perfect for outdoor performances. Mrs. Stevenson hired a San Franciscan architect named Louis C. Mulgart. He designed the amphitheater, yet her religious alliance were not pleased with it. Despite not having a design finalized, some performances were held there. The bowl came from a man named Hugo Kirchhofer when he was conducting the Hollywood Community Chorus singing and said, "It's like a big bowl. Hollywood Bowl." After the success of the bowl's first Easter service, with the orchestra playing a very crude setup, Mrs. Carter, a member of the Alliance, decided that improvements needed to be made. They decided to introduce summer concerts at 25 cents a person. They were able to bring in more members, and with this money, they were able to reconstruct the bowl, installed wood benches, and cleared through so much brush, along with other improvements. In August of 1921, the first concerts came to fruition. Known as the Symphonies Under the Stars, these were a series of summer concerts that brought success to the bowl. The Art Association renamed themselves to the Hollywood Bowl Association. In 1926, another renovation project came, which involved grading the area to make the bowl symmetrical. The bowl could now house 17,000 patrons, and a parking lot was added behind the stage. Even though the first shell was erected in 1922, they decided it also needed to be changed. After much trouble with the materials and the design used to make the shell, the final version of the shell came into fruition in 1929. Eventually, this shell had to be replaced in the 80s and updated in the early 2000s. In 1920, Mrs. Stevenson decided to withdraw from the bowl and purchased land across the Cahuenga Pass, which eventually became the Pilgrimage Play Theater. There she made her biblical plays every summer until it was destroyed by a fire in 1929. A new theater was constructed and now is known as the John Anson Ford County Cultural Arts Theater. Mrs. Stevenson passed away in 1922, and as a memorial to her stands a lit cross shining bright across the Hollywood Bowl. Now the bowl continues to bring future generations to enjoy its beauty and its music.
Good afternoon.
Day, week, or month?
Well, it's a little hard to say. You see, I'm going into the movies.
Well, you better take it for a week. It'll break your jump to Beverly Hills.
Everyone needs a place to stay when they are on vacation or are just trying to become the next star in Hollywood. And some of those people just fall in love with the place they visit and decide to live there. That must have been the narrative for many tourists and celebrity hopefuls when they eventually got a room at the Highland Tower Apartments. Constructed in 1926 by the architects Morgan, Walls, and Clements, the same architects who designed the El Capitan Theater. This apartment served as a cheap place to live for people who were trying to break into the movies. Some notable people who lived here was Mary Martin. Her son eventually became the star Larry Hagman. William Faulkner was also at one point living here, working on a screen adaptation of The Big Sleep, as well as the cult psychic Mr. Creswell, who lived in the penthouse. Ed Wood came by and visited him throughout his stay. May Robeson and Thelma Todd with their mother also lived here. Today, this apartment still serves as a place for people with dreams of stardom to reside. When you think of glamour, what comes to mind? Movie stars? Fancy clothes? Fashionable cars? Well, how about maxfactor? He popularized having makeup and created glamour by having famous movie stars as his clients. Before Factor, makeup was frowned upon. After he perfected the technique, every woman wanted to look like his glamour girls. Born in Lodz, Russia, Factor had dreams to be successful. He worked various odd jobs, including selling fruit, candy, and food at his local theater. That's where Factor got a taste of the theater business. In Russia, having extravagant makeup and wigs were all the rage, so as Factor grew a little older, he took an apprenticeship to learn how to make wigs professionally, as well as applying makeup. He eventually landed a job at a Russia Grand Opera, famously performing for Tsar Nicholas and his family. Eventually, he would land a gig with the royal family. Unfortunately, the job was more difficult than he can bear. He married a woman named Esther Rosa. Unfortunately, it was illegal for them to marry because they were Jewish and Polish. They married in secret, so Factor decided to create a new life and his family away from this oppression in America. Factor immigrated first to New York, then St. Louis, to meet up with his brother and uncle. Factor partnered up with someone he met on his trip to help sell his sought-after wigs and cosmetics at the World's Fair. Unfortunately, this man swindled his sales and merchandise. So he decided to go back to his family, and he opened up a barbershop to make an income for his family. One day at work, he overheard someone talking about the movies, and grew an immense interest for what they did and decided to move out west. In 1908, Factor, along with his family and new bride, decided to move to Los Angeles. He opened a wig store on 1204 South Central Avenue, in due part to the proximity of the theaters. Not only he sold wigs, but cosmetics, lipsticks, and grease paint as well for the theaters. He grew dissatisfied with selling other people's products, so he started experimenting more with cosmetic ingredients. The grease paint didn't make the actors look flattering on screen, so in 1914, Factor created the first cosmetic paint that looked great for film. This was massively popular, and this attracted so many different clients to his store. Some actors like John Barrymore, Mabel Normand, Charlie Chaplin, and Marie Dressler would be regulars. Factor became so well known, actors started requesting appointments for Factor to do their makeup, as well as for him to visit the film sets to apply the actors' makeup as well. He customized makeup for people's complexions and hair colors. He advertised his products at events throughout Los Angeles, which won the heart of everyone in Hollywood. With technological advances, this made Factor update his makeup techniques. He even tried to figure out what makes a woman's face with using an infamous metal contraption.
A new machine invented by maxfactor, Hollywood's makeup genius, turns the face of your favorite actress into an intricate column of figures. The lady in the perforated diver's helmet is none other than...
In 1929, the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences presented him an award for his outstanding achievements. With the actresses of the day as his guinea pigs, he knew that they would popularize his newest products. Factor moved out of his first store to the Pantages building in downtown Los Angeles, then to 326 South Hill Street to the current location. Previously the Hollywood Storage Company, on March 22, 1928, maxfactor moved into the 4-story building in the heart of Hollywood. This made it much more convenient for the studios to purchase their makeup and for the stars to visit the store to be done up. Famed architect S. Charles Lee redesigned the outside of the building, including adding green marble, brass, glass, and signage above that reads, Max Factor Makeup Studio. In 1935, a huge grand opening with the newly renovated floors was an invite-only event to showcase each floor and what will be created in each room, including makeup rooms specifically for brunettes and blondes. This one building changed the world's views of makeup. Regular women would enter and leave feeling like a movie star. With all of this growing prestige, it came to an immediate halt when in 1936, Max Factor stepped off a curb and was hit by a delivery truck. This was widely known to have contributed to his premature death in 1938 at only the age of 60. His son Frank Jr. took over his company, and it continued being very popular with the public and movie studios. The golden era of film was over, and even though during the 70s young actresses still came by to get their look on, the Max Factor building didn't have the same meaning as it once did. By the 80s, exhibits were displayed, but it was purchased by developer company Procter & Gamble. In the early 90s, it was potentially slated for demolition. Luckily, preservationists protected it, and it eventually led to be purchased by a woman named Donnell Dadigan. Currently, this iconic building is now known as the Hollywood Museum, which celebrates not only the illustrious career of Max Factor, but celebrating all of filmdom.
And I'm out in the hall with my best friends. Go for a ride.
What do people like Chuck Jones, Norman Chandler, Mickey Rooney, John Ritter, and John Huston have in common? They all attended the iconic Hollywood High School. In the early days of Hollywood, when students wanted a higher education, they had to venture elsewhere. So, to solve this, the Hollywood Union High School District was formed, and in 1903, uniting varying places together. The school originally opened in a storage room at the Masonic Temple. They moved to its current location in 1904. With the growing city of Hollywood came the movies, and where would they go to school? Hollywood High School, of course. The school even started having a reputation for the school for the stars. This was because of a famous story of how movie star Lanaturner was discovered. One day in 1936, Turner cut a typing class and decided to go to the nearby Top Hat malt shop to drink a Coke. Miraculously, the Hollywood Reporter writer Billy Wilkerson saw Turner and asked the manager if he can speak to her. Turner was suspicious, but reluctantly agreed with her, telling the manager, "Stay close." Wilkerson wanted to have a meeting with her, so Turner and her mother eventually went to his office. This resulted in Wilkerson recommending Turner to Zeppo Marx, actor turned agent, and as they say, a star is born. This story added to the school's mystique. The school constructed a larger auditorium in 1924 that housed about 2,500 seats to meet the demand of the growing population. Coincidentally, the same year actor Joel McCrea graduated. In 1921, the school decided to make the Sheik from Rudolphvalentino's famous film their school mascot. Hollywood High was extremely invested in their football teams and took great heroism in it versus anything relating to film. Their athletics teams were often coined as the Foothillers or Filmlanders, but these never stuck. A local sports writer coined them the Sheiks after the recent release of the 1923 Valentino film The Sheik. Hollywood High was growing an increasing reputation of alumni making it big in the entertainment industry. The first being Ruth Rowland, a famous silent film actress, and then Adela Rogers St. John, a prominent Hollywood reporter. With the growing population of Hollywood, this resulted in higher populations for the school. Even with the opening schools around Los Angeles, this still resulted in a huge body and the opening of Fairfax High School. The theater department, run by Arthur B. Cachell, from 1920 on to 1949, helped develop a more professional approach to the students' acting, which made their productions sought after in the community. The students acted in these mostly as a way to get discovered. One notable actress being Fay Wray of King Kong fame. One early famous legend that persists is the famous H, that students who planted it with wood and sheets started it in the late 20s. Wanting to show school spirit, they tried maintaining this H up until 1935. Here you see the H. Since the school was in the middle of such a filmmaking hub, it was a treat to see their favorite stars walking or driving by. One of these occasions, students asked Charlie Chaplin if he was able to talk to the assembly of students, but he politely declined, stating that he was not a public speaker. During the late 20s and early 30s, the studios would continue to supply extras through the student body. Students would continue receiving praise and fame, most notable being Anne Dvorak and director Edward Dmytryk. Mary Pickford even came in 1929 to do a speech for the school, which brought much anticipation to everyone how her voice would sound like. A man named William Snyder was the principal from 1909 to 1929. He penned the school motto, "Achieve the Honorable," and during his tenure, he was able to enhance both the drama and the school's academic standards. During the Depression, the school faced many hardships, including cutbacks to clubs, sports, and even hitting the students, which resulted them in getting part-time jobs after school, as well as less attendance for school events. In 1933, the Long Beach earthquake struck the school, which resulted in the original 1905 administration building to be severely damaged and demolished to be rebuilt in 1934. By the mid-1930s, Hollywood High became the mecca of students who wanted to be part of the movie industry. More notable alum was Alan Hale Jr., who played Skipper on Gilligan's Island, but more notable was 1936, where actors like Mickey Rooney, Judy Garland, Marge Champion, and Nanette Fabray walked the school's halls.
Today, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces.
In 1941, with the attack of Pearl Harbor, this ingested anxiety within the school grounds. After the war, Hollywood High prepared itself for any atomic attack, or so they thought. There was no serious impact. Women were more concerned in owning an Angora sweater. Popular hangout spots of the 50s were the Orange Julius stand and Biff's.
You know, since I've been here in California, I've made it a point to catch some of the very interesting sights out here, especially the night.
Carol Burnett started in 1949 and was the editor for the school newspaper. The 1950s were filled with teenagers driving their cars around Hollywood, listening to rock and roll, and talking about seeing Elvis on Ed Sullivan. The school celebrated its 50th anniversary. There wasn't much festivities in due part of the death of Dr. William Snyder, who was the principal for so many years. The next year, Louis Foley, who was the principal, retired. He was replaced by Harold E. Perry, who brought in John Ingle to replace the retired drama instructor, Arthur Kuchel. Notable alums of the 1950s were Stephanie Powers, who was a cheerleader, Ruta Lee, and Meredith Baxter Birney. By the 1960s, less and less films were being shot in Hollywood and were more sporadic. This resulted in the dynamics of the students changing. More students came into the school, so the administration had to figure out how to control it a bit. Surf culture invaded the school. In 1962, Columbia was making Bye Bye Birdie and needed typical teenagers, so they scouted teenagers at Hollywood High. The same year brought another problem that will be more serious in the following years: students dropping out. During the Depression, kids would drop out to help their parents, but now it was all a matter of students not being interested in school. Yet throughout the 60s, the school kept their prestige with having notable alums, including Yvette Mimieux and John Ritter, who became student body president in his senior year with a clean-shaven appearance. Most notable for Three's Company, but during school, he was popular and had an immense interest in politics. Unfortunately, with the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy, he gave up on politics and went towards the path of acting, something he wasn't particularly interested in school at first. Despite Principal Perry's attempt to keep the population down, it still ballooned, especially since students drove to school from outside of the city. In 1962, a new principal, Dr. Charles E. Sutcliffe, decided to use the grassy front lawn of the school into a parking lot where Fay Ray and many others once ate their lunch. The late 60s brought a whole bunch of anti-war and love-in sessions throughout Los Angeles, hippies and all. Yet, despite all these hiccups, this didn't affect the dress code of the school. Drama director Jerry Melton recalls, "When I came to Hollywood High in 1968, Hollywood Boulevard was awash with hippies. But the campus was still clean-cut, like something out of the past. This completely changed in 1970, when the student body complained to the administration that it was censoring discussions and speeches. Students wanted freedom of speech, and the administration rejected their pleas. A sit-in was conducted on the front lawn facing Sunset. Surprising to think that only a little more than 30 years ago, Lanaturner skipped through school the same place of the sit-in, only to be discovered. Hollywood was never going to be the same. Hollywood Boulevard became seedier with its adult movie houses and vandalism on the rise. This resulted in families moving out and lower income people moving in. This ugly world moved into the school, with classrooms being smashed to burning trash cans. This made middle-class families pull out their students, and a lot were being replaced by students who didn't even speak English. English teacher Harry Major said, "In one blow, we lost the cream of our students." The school went downhill, with the crime around rising, narcotics being sold, school fights, teen pregnancies. This resulted in the school in 1973 to have its first sex education class. Throughout the 70s, the administration tried various ways to keep students safe, including using hall passes and self-defense courses for girls. Despite these difficulties, students still had school spirit and would do their best to make the best of the troubled situation. No one thought they could be a movie star there anymore. Academics didn't help either. Hollywood High at last incorporated an ESL program to help the language barrier issue, which would eventually improve the school's overall academics. The film Hollywood High unfortunately displayed the school as a crazy sex-crazed playground, with the teachers being moronic. The 75th anniversary of the school was a disappointment, with Mayor Tom Bradley unable to show up. Entering the 80s, the school wasn't improving. 50% of the sophomore year failed an English test given at the beginning of the semester. School's financial department was burglarized, a teacher beaten up by non-students who have started making Hollywood High their home. In 1982, Stephanie Powers had a class reunion with their heart-to-heart co-star Robert Wagner, which included other alums like Carol Burnett and Alan Hale Jr. In 1983, a new principal, Willard B. Hansen, started and decided to add a fence to the school to stop derelicts from entering the school. He stated, "Derelicts regularly sleeping on campus. What bothered me was that no one seemed to care." This dramatically improved safety in the school, as well as students skipping class. In 1987, the school celebrated Alumni Day. Not surprisingly, alum commented at the way students now dress and act. Throughout the 90s, the school became a popular skate spot. In 2002, artist Eloy Torres painted a mural with many notable alums, including Lanaturner and Judy Garland, as well as those who never attended, including Cantinflas and Dolores Del Rio, to celebrate different cultures through film history. John Ritter was added in 2004. Hollywood High still serves as a school where anyone who attends has the potential to become a star. Just imagine John Ritter, Mickey Rooney, all those people walking on this side of the school. Just look at it, look how cool it looks. Back when they actually cared about adding like little craftsmanship things like this pole right here. Beautiful. Now in our next little location is actually a little hidden gem. For those of you who don't know, the UPA Animation Studio was a cutting-edge animation studio of the 50s that made animation quick, cheap, but had a unique sense of style to them. And right here, we happen to be arriving at the location. This is actually the second location of UPA Studios. It doesn't look much now on the outside, but here's the building. And currently, it's where BuzzFeed Studios is. Famous for creating cartoons such as Gerald McBoing Boing and The Telltale Heart, before moving to their Toluca Lake studio, UPA had a humble studio here when they were trying to establish themselves as a major player.
I would only imagine this is like a gate or something for the entrance, and then that building looks kind of older than the rest, don't you think? A little bit. And there's also that brick building in the background. I would say UPA.
Klasky Csupo is another animation studio that produced famous shows such as Rugrats, Rocket Power, and The Wild Thornberrys, as well as an early establishment developed by C.E. Toberman called the Community Laundry Building that helped various studios with their laundry-like dry cleaning. Now let us see what films were shot on Highland Avenue. In episode 1, we explored the history of the Hollywood Hotel, which stood on Hollywood Boulevard and Highland Avenue. Here's Charlie Chaplin's first feature film, Tilly's Punctured Romance, and we see the entrance of the hotel.
Here on the corner of Willoughby and Highland is the Gilmore gas station, but now as you see, the Starbucks. This is the filming location of LA Story. And 48 Hours.
Good thing your friends came when they did, Kate. I was getting ready to get in your ass.
Yeah, you want to try it again?
You just call your buddies back.
Opened in 1935, the Gilmore gas station went through many renovations, as you see right here. It was not kept up in its final years, but now I'm glad that Starbucks at least renovated it, so you can kind of see that it's still in good use, a good Art Deco film history.
And on 312 Highland Avenue was one of the former homes of John Wayne.
Now here I'm standing in front of John Wayne's early house, at least what I've seen. So let's check it out. See behind me? So imagine John Wayne would have entered those gates, or probably most likely they're refurbished. So here's John Wayne's early house. Just imagine John Wayne walking out there and having to drive to the studios, which is not that far away actually.
Right next to the Hollywood Bowl, there is this semi-obscure picnic area that not only has tables, but more notably, craftsman bungalows. These houses were once the homes, according to the LA Times, to Stanandlaurel, Oliver Hardy, Tyrone Power, Marilyn Monroe, and later being a hippie commune with Linda Ronstadt and Glenn Frey before the Eagles. One of these buildings were even the offices of the Marx Brothers.
Where I am at is a little nice bungalow where it's been commonly known that the Marx Brothers had their offices here. It's like a nice little courtyard, but now it looks like it's a kind of police bureau offices. It's so nice looking. It's very hidden. You can't even tell that you're in Hollywood when you're walking through here. Just imagine this being your main courtyard when you leave out in the morning. You can't even think that you're in Hollywood, honestly. So definitely pass by here. It's open to the public. It's a park. You see a lot of squirrels walking around, and it's on Highland Avenue, which is suitable for this video. See, you can even see all the mountains and everything in the back. Trees. Again, you're right next to the Hollywood Bowl. You can have a picnic here, relax. Across the street is the Highland Heritage Hollywood Museum. So, little chairs there. And again, you could go to Hollywood Bowl if you're around the area right here, right next door.
Highland Avenue has become the main artery that connected the San Fernando Valley into the movie world of Hollywood. It helped introduce all kinds of commerce that has helped make the city what it has become today.